Hello viewer, you are watching Elim TV. Welcome to Form2 Chemistry, lesson number 4. The topic is structure of atom and the periodic table. And today we focus our discussion on ion formation. Now, I'm going to be your teacher, Benjamin K. Makanda. So, before we begin our lesson, I just wish that you follow the lesson by either making a call on this number 0726-842-644. You can also SMS your questions or comments on the number 40007. You can also use our Facebook page, Elim TV, and also follow us on Twitter at elimtv_ke. So follow me in this lesson. Now, let's begin our lesson by looking at specific lesson objectives. By the end of this lesson, the learner should be able to predict the type of ion formed from a given electron arrangement of an atom. Since we are discussing about the ion formation, so by the end of the lesson, you as a learner should be able to predict the type of ion from a given electron arrangement of an atom. We discussed what an atom is, and therefore in the course of our discussion, we'll be able to understand what ions are and how we can be able to predict the type of ion formed from a given electron arrangement. That's our key objective of the discussion. Now, our lesson preview is as follows. We are going to review lesson 3, and briefly looking at lesson 3, we looked at the periodic table in lesson 3. We also looked at periods and groups in lesson 3. And we defined group as the number of electrons that occupy the outermost energy level in any given atom of an element. For example, if we take sodium with an electron configuration of 2:8:1, then we say sodium is in group 1 because the outermost energy level has 1 electron in that group. Then if we take an example of chlorine has an electron configuration of 2:8:7, and therefore, given that we have 7 electrons in the outermost energy level, chlorine belongs to group 7. So that one means that a group refers to the number of electrons occupying the outermost energy level in a given atom of an element. Now, the other thing that we discussed in lesson 3 is a period. And we defined period as the number of occupied energy level within an atom. The numbers of occupied energy levels in an atom. Let's take an example of group 1 element, and I'll again focus on sodium. Sodium has an electron configuration of 2:8:1. In the first energy level, we have 2, second is 8, and third energy level, we have 1 electron. Therefore, how many energy levels are there? There are 3. Therefore, in which period is sodium? Sodium belongs to period 3 because it has 3 occupied energy levels. The other example we can give is hydrogen. Hydrogen has an electron configuration of 1, and therefore it only has 1 energy level. As a result, hydrogen belongs to period 1. What of potassium? Potassium has an electron configuration of 2:8:8:1. Therefore, those are 4 occupied energy levels, making potassium to belong to period 4 of the periodic table. So, from that discussion that we had in lesson 2, you are able to differentiate between a group and a period. A group refers to the number of electrons, that occupies the outermost energy level, while a period refers to the number of occupied energy level in a given atom of an element. That is what we discussed in lesson 3. Today, in our discussion, we want to predict the type of ion formed from a given electron arrangement of an atom. So we are going to look at how ions are formed and what ions are, and be able to predict how they can be formed for other elements that we will not be able to discuss in this lesson. After that, we will now attempt questions in our assignment at the end of the lesson, which will enhance the understanding in the discussion. So let's begin our lesson by looking at ion formation. So now we want to look at the ion formation, and to begin with, let's get to a full understanding of outer shell electrons. We have magnesium. So this is our magnesium. Magnesium has 12 the atomic number of 12. And the mass number of magnesium is 24, approximately 24. So atomic number of 12 means that it have number of protons, which is 12. The number of electrons is also 12. Therefore, magnesium is neutral. It's an uncharged atom. So looking at the number of protons is equal to the number of electrons. The proton is positively charged, electron is negatively charged. When you add this, you get 0. no overall charge in magnesium. Now, one magnesium atom, if we have to draw, within the nucleus, we have a positive charge and we have 0 charge for the neutrons. So 12 positive charge because protons are in the nucleus. 12 positive charge because atomic number refers to the number of protons. So the charge within the nucleus is 12 plus, that's the charge. Then 0, that one is the charge on what? The charge on the neutron. So magnesium has 12 protons and it has 12 neutrons in this particular case. So when you add 12 plus 12, you get 24 as the mass number of magnesium. Now, we want to understand how magnesium is going to form its ion, given that it has the same number of protons and the same numbers of electrons. So, if we have 12 protons in the nucleus and 12 neutrons, so what does this one mean? In the first energy level, that's the first shell, we have 2 electrons. Then the second one, we have 8 electrons. For magnesium. Then the outermost energy level, the third energy level, it has 2 electrons. So in total we have 12 electrons. So just like we have 12 protons, we also have 12 electrons. The electron arrangement is 2:8:2. So proton is plus 12, electron is negative 12. When you add, you get a charge of 0. So let's understand these 12 protons and negative. So to get a full outer shell, it loses 2 electrons or gains 6 electrons. That's how magnesium can react to form a full shell of 2:8:8. It can either gain 2 electrons or gain 6 electrons or lose 2 electrons. Now, gaining 2 electrons and losing 2 electrons. The easier way to do it is actually losing 2 electrons because less energy is required to lose 2 electrons than to gain 8. So 2 electrons have been lost. So it has an electron configuration of 2:8. So when we add the electrons, 2 plus 8, we get 10 electrons. 10 electrons against 12 protons, which are positively charged. When you add, you get plus 2, a charge of plus 2. So that charge of plus 2 becomes the charge on magnesium because it has just lost 2 electrons. It has a charge of plus 2. So let's look at how this 2 is going to impact on the particle formed. So the magnesium atom now changes to magnesium ions. Magnesium raised to 2 plus. So that 2 is a charge showing that there is excess. We have extra protons. The other example is magnesium, sulfur, atomic number of sulfur is 16, which refers to the number of electrons, therefore is neutral, is uncharged. 16 protons, 16 electrons, so you have proton positive 16, electrons negative 16, you get 0, no overall charge in a sulfur atom. Therefore, within the nucleus, we have 16 protons and 16 neutrons. That is, those are the particles found within the nucleus, 16 protons, 16 neutrons. Now, on the outermost energy level, the first energy level has 2 electrons, second shell, 8 electrons. Then, the third one is going to have how many electrons? 2 plus 8, we remain with the 6. The outermost energy level for the third shell is going to have what? It's going to have 6 electrons. So, you have that one there. So, when you add 2 plus 8 plus 6, you get 16 electrons. This gives us an electron configuration of 2:8:6. Protons are positive 16, electrons negative 16. So this gives us a charge of 0. So this means that to get a full outer shell of magnesium, 2 options: lose 6 electrons or gain 2 electrons. Which way to go? Lose 6 electrons or gain 2 electrons. So the best way to go is to gain 2 electrons, for it to have 2:8:8. Gaining 2 electrons requires less energy than losing 6 electrons. So the new configuration, first energy level 2 electrons, second 8 electrons, and then the third 8 electrons. In total, we have 18 electrons against 16 protons. So plus 16 for protons, then negative 18, you get a net charge of negative 2. This net charge of negative 2 becomes the charge on sulfur. So how do we write sulfur now? From the sulfur atom, we now change and we have sulfur raised to 2 negative. 2 negative means it has an extra charge, negative charge of negative 2. That one is sulfur. What about sodium? The atomic number is 11, number of protons 11, number of electrons the same, is a neutral uncharged. So protons positive minus negative, you get 0 net charge. In the nucleus, we have 11 protons, 12 neutrons. When you add, you get a mass number of 23, the mass number of sodium. Therefore, 11 protons and 11 electrons are equal. So the first energy level will have 2 electrons, the second 8 electrons, and then the third energy level will have 1 electron. So 2:8:1 is the configuration of sodium. Protons 11, electron 11. So when you add positive and negative, you get a net charge of 0 charge. It's neutral, not charged, sodium atom. To get a full outer shell, for this, you have to lose 1 electron or gain 7 electrons. What do you think? You lose 1 electron, less energy is required. So that 1 electron has been lost. So you have 2:8, first energy level 2, second energy level 8, we have 10 electrons. There we are. Therefore, the new charge is going to be plus 11 minus 10. You will get a positive 1. That's the net charge on the sodium particle formed. So how do we write sodium? Yeah. Predict the sodium ion that is there. Sodium ion with a net charge of plus. That's what we get there. So that one becomes our sodium ion. It has a net charge of plus 1. That's an extra positive charge that has just been formed. Now, let's now look at a summary of this on the periodic table. Group 1 elements, how do they form a charge? By losing 1 electron. Hydrogen will lose 1 electron downward up to potassium. Group 2, they lose 2, 2. Group 3, they lose 3. Yeah, let's go back to group 1, 1. Electron is lost. Yeah, that's what happens to group 1. So they have a net charge of plus 1. So that's how they form their ions. Sodium ion, for example. Then group 2, they are losing 2. Yes. So they have a net charge of 2 plus. That's the net charge. For example, we have magnesium with a net charge of plus 2. Group 3, they lose 3 electrons. So what's the net charge on them? 3 plus. That's the oxidation number. And then the ion becomes aluminium ion. So let's go to group 5. Yeah, we go to group 5. What happens? It gains 3 because if it gains 3, it has an electron configuration of 3 negative. So we have phosphorus ion. That's phosphorus ion, P to the power of 3 negative. We move on. The next group. In this group, it has gained 3 electrons. That's the point to note. We go to group 6. It is gaining 2 electrons. So the new configuration is 2:8, and then the charge is going to be negative, 2 negative. So we have sulfur to the power of 2 negative. That's what's happening there. Then we have the next one. The next one here is group 7. It is gaining 1. So we have chloride ion. So that's what happens. We remain with how many groups? We have group 8 and group 4. Can you predict what happens to these two groups that we have not discussed? So meaning that from group 1 to group 3, what happens? They lose 1 to 3 electrons. From group 5 to group 7, they do what? They gain 3, 2, and 1 electron respectively. Now group 8, it has a full outer shell. It has a full outer shell. The first energy level, for example, from the other one is 1. So now we have a summary here. Atom, electron gain, electron loss. When an atom gain or lose electron, it forms an ion. So from this one, atom, electron loss, it forms a positive ion. Yeah. And when an electron lose electron, it forms a cation, which is a positive ion. When it gain electron, it forms a negative charge, which is called anion. Therefore, anion is a negative charge from this structure here. So this one is a cation with a positive charge because it has just lost electron from a positive charge. It becomes a cation. And then it has a positive charge. You're able to see that. So cation is a positively charged particle. So starting from the atom, electron loss, it forms a positive ion. Therefore, it becomes a cation. And now we are looking at this cation. Now let's go to the anion. Atom, electron gain, it forms ion. So the ions are negative charged. Anion A stands for negative ion. And then what about this one here? This one is a positive ion. The other one is a negative ion, anion. Now, moving on, what's there for an ion? Formation of ion. How do ions get their charge? Those are the things you have to look at. And let's refer to the demonstration that we just had. How do ions get their ions? We have what we call octet rule. What is octet rule? Octet stands for 8. Every atom wants to a complete octet. Every atom will have a complete octet that actually should have 8 electrons in the outermost energy level. Now, let's go to the periodic table. How do we get the octet rule? So here we have a periodic table, and we just want to go group by group. We are looking at group 1, that's group 2 of elements. The other one are transitional elements. We're not discussing these elements. The ones that we are crossing, they are called transitional elements. So we have group 1, then we have group 3, group 4, 5, 6, 7, then lastly 8. These are the groups. We want to look at how they form ions. Group 8 is in red because it has a full configuration. So let's look at helium. Helium is in group 2. And helium being in group 2, it also has a full configuration. That's like group 8 elements. A full configuration means that helium actually obeys the duplet configuration. The other one obeys the octet configuration. Sodium and chlorine are the examples we want to pick in this case. Here we have sodium. Now what happens to sodium? Let's look at what happens to sodium. We are now using sodium. This is an atom of sodium. Sodium has 11 protons, and therefore sodium raised to the plus 11. Those are protons. It has 11 protons, and this one is a sodium atom. So when you draw, that's the nucleus. The first energy level has 2 electrons for sodium. Yeah, we are here. Then the second energy level has 8 electrons. That's the distribution of 8 electrons. Lastly, the third energy level has only 1 electron. That's the distribution. That's how they are distributed. Now, how does this ion get formed from sodium? How does sodium form its ion? We have just seen from the other demonstrations how the ion is formed. The configurations in this demonstration is 2:8:1. So the outermost energy level does not obey or does not actually have a full configuration that is octet in nature. It has actually 2:8:1 when it's supposed to have 2:8:8 or 2:8. So that 1 electron for sodium has to be lost. So when you lose 1 electron for sodium, so the outermost energy level is also lost altogether. Losing the 1 electron, it's also accompanied by the loss of the outermost energy level altogether. So you have a configuration of 2 in the first energy level, then 8 electrons in the outermost energy level. But remember, sodium has had 11 protons. So what has been lost? It has just lost 1 electron. How many electrons remain? It has 11 protons. Now, how many electrons are remaining? Sodium atom is neutral. It has now 11 electrons against 12 protons. The net charge is going to be plus 1. So the particle that is formed becomes positively charged, is plus 1. This becomes the particle that has been formed. So that one leads to the formation of sodium ion. Sodium raised to the power of plus, it becomes a sodium ion. That's how sodium forms its ion. Let's now go to chlorine. Now we want to have a discussion on chlorine. So how does the atom of chlorine look like? In the nucleus, it has 17 protons, and therefore the first shell of chlorine has how many electrons? The first shell in the nucleus we have 17, so the first shell has 2 electrons. That's true. Then the second shell, the distribution of electrons, is going to have 8 electrons. That's how we distribute them. Those are 8 electrons. Then 2 plus 8, we have 10. The outermost energy level, the last energy level, the third one is going to have 7 electrons, and that's how the distribution is done. We have 7 electrons. Again, the chlorine atom does not have an octet configuration. The configuration is not yet. So we have a vacuum there, a space that can actually be occupied by an extra electron. So these electrons are actually paired. So we have 1 lone electron that needs a partner. So that's why you're having this box here. So chlorine has to gain 1 electron and get occupied there. So the black one is an electron that has been gained by chlorine. Remember, it had 17 protons. Now it has gained 1 electron. So 17 protons plus 1 electron that has come. How many electrons are now there in total? Given that the number of protons and electrons are the same, it has now 18 electrons. So how do we get the net charge? So now the chlorine atom has 17 protons, and now we have this black box shows that we have 1 electron that has to be gained here. This black shows that it has gained 1 electron. So in total, chlorine is going to have 18 electrons against 17 protons. So this means that it has gained 1 extra electron. So 17 protons plus 17. Then how many electrons are there? Having gained this 1 electron here, it has 18 electrons. So when we work out the net charge on this is 17 protons plus negative 18, you get a net charge of negative 1. Therefore, it means that the chlorine will have a net charge of -1. So we have a chloride ion. So this is the chloride ion that is formed. That is when it comes to chlorine. That's how these ions are formed, either by gaining or losing electrons. And you have just seen that group 1, 2, and 3, they gain electrons. They lose electrons, while from group 5 going up to group 7, they gain electrons to form their ions. So, and the gaining or losing of electrons depend on the amount of energy that is required. So here, in the middle where we have the pros here on this periodic table, these elements, we cannot be able to actually explain their property. So let's go back to group 1. Gaining losing one electron has a net charge of +1. Then group 2 will have a +2. Group 3, +3, because it has lost 3. Then group 4, what can we say about group 4? It has the same number of electrons, 2:4, 2:8:4. So it can either gain or lose 4 electrons. Therefore, we are not able to tell the kind of charge that is formed. Let's go to group 8. All the group 8 elements do not gain or lose electrons. They don't form ion. Why? Because they are stable. They have a full configuration in the outermost energy level, and therefore the net charge on them is 0, because they neither gain nor lose, so they have a net charge of 0. Group 7, they will gain 1 electron and therefore have a net charge of -1. Group 6, they gain 2 electrons to have a net charge of -2. Then group 5, they gain 3 electrons to have a net charge of -3. That's what happens. Now looking at this, group 1 up to group 4, group 3, they are metals, and therefore they lose electrons from ions. Now, here we have sodium ion, we have chloride ion, we have sodium ion, it has gained 1 electron, we have chloride ion, it has lost 1 electron, we have chloride ion that has gained 1 electron. So gaining will give you a negative charge, losing will give you a positive charge. What's an ion? We have an atom, and then what happens to an atom? It becomes positively charged. An atom can become positively charged. We call that atom. When it becomes positively charged, it's called cations. So we have cations positively charged. An atom still, negatively charged. How do we call a negatively charged ion? It's called an ion. An ion is negatively charged. So let's go back to sodium. We are on sodium, a configuration of 2:8:8. So it has one valence electron. Outermost shell has 1 electron, 1 valence electron. It has been lost now. We have 2:8. That becomes sodium ion. It has just lost 1. So we call it sodium ion. It has lost 1 electron, and that's how we write sodium ion. There we have sodium ion. Then, after writing sodium ion, because it's a particle, we actually put it in bracket with a positive charge to show that it is an ion. We have oxygen. So the first energy level is 2. The second one is, how many electrons are there? First is 2. Second is going to have 6. Is 2:8:6. So sodium has gained 2 electrons. So it forms an ion with -2, and we call this one oxide ion. That's how we write it. And we put it in bracket, and that's the ion of sodium. That's how we actually represent the ions. Now, if we have sodium ions and the chloride ions, they are coming together, which we shall be discussing on to form ion. We have sodium ion and the chloride ions. So they combine. So we have neon. Neon is in group 8. How do they form ion? It's a challenge. How are they going to form ion? We are just said in the last demonstration that they are full charge. So we have calcium ion, we have the chloride ions. We're just now giving a demonstration of some of these ions get formed. Calcium 2:8:2. Therefore, what happens? It loses 2 electrons plus the outermost energy level, and then that one becomes the diagram of calcium ion. Chloride ion 2:8:7. It gain 1 electron. Then there we have chloride ions. And then now side by side they can form a compound. Then we have argon. Did you get the structure right of chloride? So this is the structure of calcium and chloride ion. Sodium, magnesium, what do they have in common? They are metals. Sodium and magnesium, they are metals. And then how do they form ions? They form positive ions. We call them cations. Now group 1 are metals. Yeah. Group 1 are metals, and then they form, like for example, group 1, they form positive ions. Group 2 are also metals. They form positively charged ions with a net charge of +2. That's an example of group 2. Then nonmetals, we have oxygen is a nonmetal, fluorine is a nonmetal because they gain electrons. They are called anions. Group 6 are metals, and oxygen is metal. It has just gained 2 electrons to form an oxide ion. This is fluorine, which is group 7, is a non-metal. It's going to gain 1 electron and has done that to form a fluoride ion with a net charge of -1. Yeah, so group 3 elements, and we have aluminium. What happens to aluminium? It loses 3 electrons to form a net charge of +3. Group 5 elements, it gains 3 electrons to form a net charge of 3 negative. There we are, that was nitrogen. Group 4 elements, what happens to them? It can either gain or lose 4 electrons. Therefore, how do we conclude this? Yeah, here we are, atom gains or lose. They can gain or lose electrons to form positively charged particles. And these positive charged particles are called cations. When they lose, they have negative charge. They are called anions. And we have a summary of this here. Yeah, we have sodium and we have noble gases. How do they form their ions? Yeah, a discussion on the next time. So those demonstrations help us understand how ions are formed in different atoms of the elements. They can either be positively charged or negatively charged from that kind of demonstration that we have just had. Now I want us to attempt this. We want to summarize our lesson by now looking at some of the questions that we can be able to attempt. So the questions are here. Complete the statement that follows. Dmitry Mendeleev attempted to classify elements. He arranged elements in order of their dash. In the modern periodic table, elements are arranged in order of their dash. So that is one question that you have to attempt. Then the question number 2 that you should attempt after this. Magnesium belongs to group 2 and period 3 of the periodic table. Roman 1, state the other name of group 2 elements. That one is a research that you should do. You have not yet done this, but I believe you can be able to answer that. Roman 2, write the electron arrangement for an ion of magnesium. Again, you're going to score 2 marks. So that marks the end to our lesson, and we conclude our day by having a look at this. Now, ion formation, and I have this. I lost an electron. The question is, are you positive? Think about this. I lost an electron. Therefore, the question is, are you a positive? Therefore, to that end, we come to the end of our lesson. And before that, for comments, questions, and clarification, you can visit our Facebook page, Elim TV. You can also follow us on Twitter at elimtv_ke. You can also call us on the number 0726 842 244, as well as sending you SMS to the number 40007. Up to there, we come to the end of our lessons, and I've been your teacher, Benjamin K. Makanda. Until next time, continue watching Elim TV. Thank you.